I'm going to call the special call meeting of the Fort Worth City Council to draw and submit a proposed 10-district map to their districting task force. And now we move to drawing of council proposed redistricting map that quickly. So all of your maps are in your Dropbox. Kidding.
Well,
Read it again. Where? What statement? The other one.
there have been amendments to.
Just a second. Sorry, I got to follow Ron's orders here. The city council adjourned executive session at 1:22 p.m. The special call meeting of the Fort Worth City Council to draw and resubmit a proposed 10-district map to the district task force is now called to order. Now you're good, Michelle. Sorry.
There are changes to exhibits E and F. Both the map and the table have changed on both of those. We don't have the revised numbers for those, but we can show you the maps and go through. Did y'all have a preference on where you want to start? Did you want to start with the changes on E and F?
I think we'll start with F. Carrie?
Michelle, which version do you have here?
3.3.
Perfect. You're the best.
All right.
Yesterday, the council received Moon Mockingbird 3.2, and I think Councilor Moon is prepared to describe the changes in Moon Mockingbird 3.3, which Michelle Swindle is showing us now.
Yeah, so I guess we evolved through. Let me just go over the main changes. Let me go over the data at a high level first. With this Mockingbird version 3.3, we have two new districts, 10 and 11. 11 is actually a majority-minority area. And so I think that's a win for us to say that we have two new districts, and one of which is majority-minority. Overall, we have 7 combined supermajority areas and majority-minority areas. The criteria that's either partially met or fully met, there's really 6 items, which scores very high. Compactness is only partially met, and that's really just tied to the challenges with District 7. If you look on the eastern boundary of District 7, Michelle, if you can kind of just show them the holes in our city limit boundaries. Because you have holes there, there's 3, 2 of which are actually, looks like 4, but 2 of them are connected. That is why you only partially meet the compactness criteria. This map, compared to others, has District 7 going on the west side of those cities, and so it creates a partially met criteria for that. So outside of that, there's 6 criteria that are met, tied to minority interest groups. It scores very well. And then the changes from a couple weeks ago include District 9 encompassing historic South Side, the Evans-Rosedale area there. But most importantly, it becomes a majority Hispanic district by doing that. It has a little bit of a piece, if you'll scroll south. You have a small piece south of 20. District 8 is able to encompass a larger piece of Hallmark and all of Burleson ISD. District 6 loses the Ulan Mall area, but maintains most of Crowley ISD, the future Tarleton campus, and is still majority-minority district. So in summary, we have 7 majority-minority areas, which is the highest of any map, and the 2 new districts, one is majority, minority. You may just zoom out and let each one.
Any other feedback for Carrie after the discussion we had last week? Carlos?
Carrie, what are your majority, minority districts again? D11 and what else?
5, there you go. So 2 is supermajority, and it's majority Hispanic. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
11.
10 or 11, yeah. Eleven.
11. Any other questions or feedback, Council? Elizabeth?
Yeah. Can you please give, I want to make sure we're using the correct terminology here, because what we as a city use as a metric for supermajority or majority minority districts is not the same standard that's used in the mapping process. And so, Leanne, if you could provide that distinction so that we make sure when we're making these decisions that we're using the correct metric.
Well, I think it's important to note, first off, I know I'm a broken record with this, but we, of course, want to make sure that when we're choosing a map that we're not using race as the predominant factor and that we're looking at all of the criteria, because that's what makes sure that you're choosing the map on a solid legal basis. So when we've had our outside counsel look at these maps, they have looked at how many of these districts are majority minority, because that is, part of the factor that you look at. However, when you're looking at a minority opportunity district, you're looking at those 3 criteria that I've mentioned multiple times as well. So it's kind of a both. I don't know if that's answering your question exactly, Ms. Beck, but I think it's important to look at both of those factors.
But just to be clear on the minority opportunity districts, we've not yet been able to establish that with any of the maps that we're looking at,
Right, that's correct.
because that's going to tie in the voting patterns. So what we're working on for our data is the supermajority minority areas and the majority minority areas as set by the redistricting task force.
Yes, that's true, but I will also say that one of the things that, for instance, that the attorney mentioned is that if you look at the current districts, you see, for instance, the African-American minority opportunity districts performing quite well, even with a 30% population. So I don't want us to get too hung up on the percentages. That's not the be-all, end-all, but it is something that you can look at to ensure that you're not discriminating.
And that's what I tried to do with this map, was create the second majority Hispanic district, similar like we have with District 2. And we were able to accomplish that with District 9.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if we made the distinction, because it's my understanding in the law, when you talk about a minority opportunity district, it's not minority in the aggregate, meaning anybody that's not otherwise white, but whether it would be a Black community, Asian community, Hispanic community. So we have to essentially, if we're going to call it a minority opportunity district, it needs to be defined which minority opportunity district that is. Not to say that there can't be coalition districts, but if we're going to give numbers, I think it's
But I'm not
better
calling
to-
these minority opportunity districts. I'm calling them majority
minority.
areas.
But we take that and then ensure we have those
We have it.
opportunity
And
districts, which is part of our
Part of the
our
underwriting criteria
resolution.
that the legal team will do based
Right.
on all the maps that are done.
But that is part of our resolution. And so if we're using the terminology and the distinction from the beginning, then at the end, we don't come into a situation where after we've had legal review it, those aren't the same. And so I want to make sure if we're talking about opportunity districts, while we don't have that underlying data yet, that we make it clear this is a African-American opportunity district, this is a coalition opportunity district, this is a Hispanic opportunity district, this is an Asian opportunity district, this is a whatever classification we want to pick, so that there's, I think, a little more clarification and transparency from what we're doing here on council.
Sure. And if we're trying to get to a minority opportunity district, we have to have a high number of MMAs and SMAs
Get there.
to get to an MOD. And that's what this map allows us to do, basically given the 7 combined MMAs and SMAs.
Well, we should be looking at total population numbers
We are, for SMAs and MMAs.
for humans,
For what?
just people. So if we've got, say, District 2, total population is 95. Total Hispanic population is 64. White, 13, Black, 12. So,
That's an SMA,
right, so, and
which
that
has
would
an
also be.
opportunity to be an MOD
as a
based on legal review of voting
Hispanic,
patterns.
Right, a Hispanic or Latino MOD. But as we go down, we need to make sure that we're making that designation so that we're clear on what opportunities we're providing in the city, because that is part of our.
Well, I think, I don't disagree, Elizabeth, but I think at this stage in the process, it's a lot of nuance. And so to hear what your concern is, or really just reflection on this process, is as we send this map, whichever map we send over, to, in the comments, possibly justify this conversation we're having and go into the data a little bit further, knowing we're still waiting on that extra piece of voter data. Gina?
I have to second your thinking on that. What we discuss around this table could be considered, bureaucratese, but we have to remember people at home are watching. And so I appreciate the point that Elizabeth brought up and support you in those. And I think your fix for that will help it. But we have to always be mindful that people are at home who are watching us and don't know what the heck we're talking about. So that's important to me.
Thank you, Gina. Any other questions for this map that Carrie's drawn? No. Chris, anybody? I'm looking at Jared and Chris too, because y'all had kind of collaborated a little bit on that last map that we were looking at last time. Any other commentary for this map?
I guess the biggest change was like 11 and 4.
Sorry, the biggest change was making District 9 a majority Hispanic district.
Okay.
That was really the goal we were trying to accomplish. And so we overlapped I-35, moved District 8, gave them District 8 got more of the southwest part of the city, south of Hallmark. And then District 6 captured a little bit more of the area south of 20, but was able to go all the way over to Chisholm Trail Parkway with the exception of Euland Mall. And it's the 7 MMAs that are big.
Carrie, where did you say, I know you didn't say, you only made a comment that said compactness only partially met. Could you localize that, or is there
Yeah, it's
any area specific?
It's the 3 holes in District 7's map.
Okay.
Because the other maps you'll see District 7 doesn't go into the. Yeah, those holes are, other cities. Show them on the map.
Has a score of .04, which is just below the standard of .05. It's very difficult to meet, so you wouldn't consider that to be a significant deficiency.
And this question is either for Fernando or maybe you. I know in this map, District 7 does not meet the compactness. And in previous maps, we've talked about District 3 not meeting the compactness, again, for similar reasons. And so my question is, are we going to have to make, is it one or the other? We're going to have one district that's not going to meet that criteria.
No, it is possible to meet the compactness test, and in fact, you'll see in the Williams-Nettles Moon map, it does meet the compactness test. So it is possible. I think it's fair to say that barely missing the mark on the compactness test for District 3 or District 7 should not disqualify the map from consideration.
Fair enough. Okay. Any other questions here? Thank you, Carrie, because I think you were really thoughtful in the changes that you made, and I know you've put a lot of work into this. I appreciate that. I don't want to make assumptions, but I'm going to do so, which would be the next map we need to relook at again is the combination between Jared and Chris. I know that staff worked on that merger with Williams, Moon, Nettles, but my understanding is that's a staff-drawn map, correct? Michelle, that was your attempt to try to reconcile things, or was that all, did the three of y'all get together and do that?
No. That was a merger between several maps, the Williams-Nettle and then the Moon Blue Bonnet. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
And so what we did today, knowing that the merger, when you overlay maps, it basically creates a map of commonalities. There were some amendments that we needed to make to E to work backwards to adjust what it overcorrected.
So do
with
you want to
overlay.
look at that map, or do you want to look at,
So I presented the map with amendments, but essentially it's E with amendments working backwards for where the merge overcorrected.
still, sorry, don't understand. Do you want to look at that map? or do we-
Yes.
Okay,
Exhibit
perfect.
E with amendments that Councilor Williams is prepared to describe.
Perfect, let's do that.
You have it. It was, Exhibit E is part of the communication that we sent to the council yesterday.
Perfect.
However, the map that we're displaying is not the same that you have in your package.
No, it's revised. So we can look at E and I can talk through the revised edits, or
Let's
we
do
can
that.
look at.
That's
okay.
great.
So there's no tables for revised Exhibit F or Exhibit E. We just have the maps available and the data in the app.
Yeah, so we can show E, and then I'll talk through the amendments that we would like to see and how those affect the demographics.
Okay?
And as she's pulling that up, I think,
Oh, she already has it up?
Yeah, you already have the amendment, right?
This is the revised.
Yeah.
Great,
Just-
we can go from there.
so is
then,
it your
yeah.
intention, Chris, is that, I'm sorry, Jared, that the Exhibit B, which was Williams Nettles, I'm not saying we're tabling it, but we're really turning towards this new amendment. So now we've got the map that Carrie just presented and this new amendment map.
E, yes.
Does that help y'all kind of shove some paper aside, and we're going to focus on these two maps for a second and whittle that down? Because we want to make a decision today.
Exactly.
Great.
So with this map, what we did was we adjusted the boundary in District 8 from what was in original E from Berry down to Echo Lake. We had to adjust the northern boundary of that to compensate for that. Also down on the south between District 6 and District 8, you can see that's exactly same as the way version E was. And then we had to make corrections to District 3 to make the boundary line I-30. So those are the amendments that we make. From a high level, just looking at demographics, this also makes 7 majority minority areas. We can look at the data to go deeply into that. 4 of which Latino populations are above 40%. 1 is at 39.9. And then 2 of the districts are majority African American. So that's the changes with amendments of how that affects the demographics from the table that you see.
Sorry.
Jared, what's the name of this map again? I'm trying to keep track.
This one's Exhibit A. I'm sorry, Exhibit E.
Exhibit E revised.
And if you're in your software, you can see it. It's shared with the council as well.
And then which districts are the 7 MMAs? Are you saying 7?
Yes, so District 2, District 4, 5, 8, 9, and 6. And let me correct that, that should be 6 MMAs.
6 MMAs, yeah.
The difference is there's 4 Latino majority and 2 African American majority.
And when you say majority, are you saying over 50%?
Over 40%.
Okay.
So majority in terms of when you look at the disaggregated racial populations, Latino is the highest out of all of those.
Which would be the same for the Mockingbird map. They would have District 8 and 5 are both over 40%, and then Latinos would be 2, would be 9 and 2.
So Jared, is this the only map you guys are going to show, or are you going to show another map?
This one is, it looks very similar between B and E.
Okay,
So-
so what makes this one better than the one we just saw from Terry?
For this one, it has 2 African American seats and has 4 opportunities for Latinos to represent a candidate of their choice.
And this map also is a combination of the Nettles, Williams, and Moon's map.
Okay.
So the original B that we, I guess, submitted, which was Nettles and Williams, it turned into a Nettles, Williams, Moon map. And when we looked at that map, we made a few adjustments to that map is what we see here today, which allows 4 opportunity Hispanics and 2 Black opportunity districts, which is 6.
I think, I know the lawyer's going to jump out of the chair, but I think there is, no matter what the law says, there is an expectation that we see more opportunities for Hispanics in terms of representation. And even though that won't be the criteria, I guess legally speaking, but it does bring some level of calm for me based on what I'm hearing.
Well, and I just want to just say for the record that this map does it meets all of the other criteria. Is that right, Michelle?
It hasn't been evaluated yet.
Oh, it hasn't been evaluated. Okay, but
The
one that it was-
unrevised version met all the
Yeah, the
criteria.
one that it was based on. did.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's important to note because
Okay.
that way you have met all the other criteria.
Okay.
But to Gina's point, back in 2015, when I served on the redistricting task force then, the thought process there to make the recommendation add 2 opportunity districts did anticipate that there would be major changes as far as the census data is concerned. And so from a legal standpoint, to make a better case for it, we opted to wait for the 2020 census data. And so I think, if I can interpret what Gina's saying, yes, we have our criteria to meet, but from a fairness and equity standpoint, based on what the census data is telling us, I think that's where Gina says, some deference needs to be looked at when you're dealing with a Hispanic population.
Thank you for the Gina translation. You're right on the mark.
Michelle, would it be possible to pull up this table alongside the other moon map table? And I know that our eyesight may not be that good. Maybe you can zoom in a little bit.
And just while she's doing it, to go back to what Fernando was saying, this map was originated from the E, which met all the criterias. And the reason why the changes that were made was to make Hallmark in one district, and also to it was Echo Lake and Berry and Riverside, those adjustments. And the population was about the same. It was just a moving of the lines.
But in this map, the community of interest around Hallmark is bifurcated.
No, Hallmark is together. That piece that you see that's cut out, that's Willow Creek.
Okay.
And I just want to put on the record, while we're going through this, my office did receive an email, and I believe that he has submitted a map as well, that particular individual, longtime resident of the Worth Heights neighborhood, and they requested to keep Worth Heights and Echo Lake together. That's why you hear a conversation about Echo Lake. While they're on other opposite sides of 35, the connectivity between the two communities is pretty extensive.
Way too big.
I missed it.
So the changes for the revised, we don't have a table for that.
You don't have the data table for the new map?
I take that back. We did send that out. Sorry. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So. Can't bring up my Zoom again. Sorry. The map Zoom isn't returning.
Or if it's faster, you can print them all. It doesn't matter. It's just hard for me to see without data side by side.
Yeah, I understand. Sorry. Is there anything particular you want me to focus on, or just the criteria?
Well, yeah, so if you look at because we're talking about demographic data for each district, and specifically a breakdown of a Latino population, I'm curious how they compare side by side. Because they both seem to have 6 or 7 MMAs. And the breakdown of those populations, back to Elizabeth's original point earlier, we don't have to get in the weeds, but I just kind of want to see that side by side.
Is that large enough for you to see? Is that text?
What? Yeah.
Is there okay. Which printer can I send them to?
Could we take a recess to figure it out?
I was like,
We're
I'm
gonna
over
print, so you
I
get
don't-
3 minutes of recess. I'm kidding.
Hey, that's fine. I hate to put them on the spot,
Yeah.
and folks watching
In
and
zipper
seeing this boring
across the
stuff.
street. Or do you want me to email them to you? Okay. That means I have to open my email on here, doesn't it? What's her name? What was her name? Maria. Sorry, everyone. Maria. You can help me out? What's her?
Printing out 3.3 in revised.
Correct. But I can't remember her name. The girl, Maria. Thank you.
I'm gonna change it.
Revised. ENF. Table 3. There you go. Sorry.
This is a revised Williams Nettles move.
Yes.
Do you want to call it revised somewhere so we can distinguish it from the original?
Oh, that's.
And the same for the 3.3.
Yeah. Well, I don't have that data
Yeah, no,
finished yet. We haven't done the COIs or the block groups for either of these versions because they were just finished
Yeah, it takes no time.
at one, correct? But to be honest, I had the wrong one then. All right. Yeah. Do you know why it's not zooming for me? That works. Okay. Or is there anything on the map that y'all want to zoom to and see?
Microphone on. Yes. But
And
you're
let's
almost
look at
there.
the African American since it was brought up as well.
Yeah, do both of them, please.
To do them larger.
To ease Leanne's heartburn, we're looking to make sure that we're meeting our resolution goal of providing minority opportunity districts.
And because we're discussing which one meets those criteria, it's hard for me to say it without the demographic data in front of us.
Do you want them larger than that?
Ma'am, sorry.
Do you want me to zoom in closer?
That's good.
Okay. They should be lined up.
So I'm oversimplifying here when I look at the table. Somebody else check me that's closer to the table. But I see a more significant difference in District 3 in the Williams Exhibit E map. But the rest of them are fairly similar when I look at the voting age population. Yes. That's,
District 3 is their line.
and I'll do the same evaluation now, looking at just Hispanic population percentage outside of VAP.
I would think the geographical difference there is the map on the right includes Alamo Heights, includes Las Vegas Trail area, and the map on the left does not. This would be the west side of LBT. That's right, and then.
That's
and
right.
then the
Alamo
map on the
Heights
right
and
does not
Sunset Heights
include-
is not in. It would be in 7 in ours. I would also add that in the revisions that we made, District 6 becomes a majority African-American district. In the F, it is not. Also, I would argue that in F, 11 is an illusion of an opportunity if you look at the demographics. Specifically, the white population, 11 is 48.7%.
Elaborate on the first, both these points. We're gonna go toe-to-toe on those 2 points, Mr.
Absolutely.
On the,
So in a Exhibit F, the white population is 48.9%, Black is 13.9%, Latino is 24.8%. And then as you go further along, you pick up some of the other communities of color.
but in 5, okay, earlier you used the number 40%, correct? Used the threshold 40% earlier.
Yes, so
Okay.
four of the districts in the revise have a percentage of 39.9% or higher for a Latino population.
Okay, but none of the districts in your map have 39.9 African-American, where the one on this map, Mockingbird does have 39.9%.
But it doesn't have 2 majority African-American seats. Whereas
Where
the
you,
map we
you're basing
submitted
it
does,
majority based on 33%,
based on the highest percentage.
the highest percentage?
When you compare
Well, District
groups.
5 does.
And then what's the second one?
8,
8 is majority African-American in this one.
yep. So we have 2 there. And then on the new district being majority minority, I mean, are Asians classified as minority?
So in District 8 on F, it's 54%. Let me go back. I can't see it up here on the map.
You want to see,
11, 10, 9.
you want to see the map or?
No, I'm just looking at on F, the demographics for African-American is 31%. Is that correct? What is it? 33%.
33.
And Latino, how many?
For the same district?
Yes.
Is 44.
So it's not a majority black.
Okay. And that's 5 or that's 8? That's 8, okay. All right, and then on the, qualifying the new District 11, I mean, I'm counting Asians as minority. So that makes the District 11 a majority minority.
With the serious
Majority minority.
coalition built.
Yeah, it's the data.
It does look like from a communities of interest standpoint, the Williams-Nettles map, Exhibit E, has a total of 4 across all districts. Let me back that up. When you compare Exhibit E to Exhibit F, there are some commonalities to areas that were split up. For example, in both, District 3 has community of interest number 67 split, but it appears that Moon's map has more splitting of communities of interest than Exhibit E. And that is one of our criteria.
But the goal is less than 25%, and both of them are within that criteria. And it's 1.8%.
Madam Mayor, I know we're all still studying. I'm just going to let you know right now, I'm with E. And that
Okay.
way, if I go for a break, y'all will know.
Well, what we'll probably do here in just a minute, because we've got to move on, is we can make a motion, and if you decide to do that, that's fine. If y'all need a 5-minute break to look at this, that's fine, but we're going to kind of move things along because we have to, because we promised our redistricting task force we'd send them a map.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Does anybody have any staff questions specifically? No?
I move that we support and consider Exhibit E as the map this council endorses with the amendments.
I'll second that.
I think we'll be here all day.
Go ahead, Elizabeth, were you going to say something? You have a question, Carlos?
Point of clarification, so, Mayor, are we then embarking on a vote?
Yes.
to,
And I guess the legal procedure then would be, you could make a substitute motion, correct? If you're concerned about Gina's motion for Exhibit E.
I'll make a substitute motion. Is that what we're supposed to do?
Yes.
Yes. You need
Okay.
a second.
So I'll make a motion that we consider Exhibit F,
Version 3.3.
version 3.3. Same thing with this one, Nettles, in that the data on the Moon Nettles Williams map was not completely underwritten. Neither one of them were.
There's a motion that requires a second.
All right, Leanne, point of clarification here. We have been told there were other maps submitted in the interim, right, by other groups, individuals. We're not considering any of those.
No, sir, you're not.
This is just our map to send to redistricting.
You've received a total of 17 resident-produced maps that will be submitted to the task force, but are not to be reviewed by the council.
Right. And some of those maps, and I only was able to review a few, also have, to varying extents, majority minority districts represented. One, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Leanne, had three.
Right.
I don't know all the ins and outs, again, as far as the demographic data is concerned. I mean, there's just a lot to process here. Just saying that for the record. And I'm trying to give a good faith effort here into taking in all these changes, some of the changes that have been recently made. It's a bit difficult.
What are our options?
I will say, just echo Carlos, the only change that was made to the E only affected 6, 9, and 8. It's the original map that was submitted, ready for Tuesday's vote. Just to make that observation.
And the only changes submitted on mine was 3, 6, and 9.
Right.
But it's still data that can impact the overall numbers. Mine was a population of about 900 people swapping between the three districts, trying to clean up the boundaries. And I think that's one of the distinct differences you'll see between my map and the other map. Is just, it's more congruous. The boundaries are finite with major arterials. A lot of navigating in between, I don't know,
Well,
neighborhoods or whatever.
to
try
that point,
make
Carrie,
things
if I
work.
could, in talking to constituents on the north side, which are being affected, of course, by the two new districts, the North Fort Worth Alliance, they feel like the map that you've submitted protects, so to speak, those communities of interest best by defined territories.
Without a doubt. I mean, you can see the lines are clean with the whole map. The lines are clean comparatively than the others. But and again, the 7 MMAs is the larger variable for trying to support people of color and make sure their voice is heard at City Hall.
Can I just ask, for District 3, what is the 67, the community of interest that split in this?
So again, what's,
I want to answer that question. What is the one that's showing split in District 3, 67?
It's split on both of them,
have it.
yeah.
I just want to figure out what it is and if,
originally area neighborhood alliance.
yeah. Okay, got it.
They're both split in those maps.
Yeah, it's just splitting Ridgemar, which is part of that alliance,
Yeah.
to the north part, which I think is small.
Yeah, okay,
Yep, and it's because they both divide at 30.
right. Okay, so we've got a motion and a substitute motion on the floor that we need a second in order to vote on it. Do we have a second for Carrie's motion?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, Leonard. So Robert's Rules of Orders here. So we're going to vote on the substitute motion first, correct, Leanne?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I've got a second. Any other discussion, council, before we vote? No?
What map are we? I mean,
We have to
what-
vote on the substitute motion first, which is Mr. Moon's map, which is Exhibit F. No? Yes, F.
Exhibit F, version 3.3.
And after you all come to a consensus, I'm going to read for Ron the official motion. It's very long, but y'all
Okay.
decide on your map.
Okay. So is there any other discussion, council? Can I have ayes around the table?
Aye.
Nays?
Nay.
Okay. Now we can vote on Mrs. Bivens' motion. For. Sorry, Gina. That's right, you're still on the market.
She's on the, well,
How could I? Okay. So that is Exhibit E. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. All nays, that's 3. Okay. Nays again, please.
Which one did you vote for the last one? Okay. You did not vote for the last one?
You didn't vote for either?
Correct.
Well, let's finish this count first. Do you have your votes you need? Show of hands, aye.
Exhibit E revised.
Okay. And then I've got nays. Please raise your hand for Ron, for his sanity. You're a nay, aren't you, Carlos? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now, do you need to read motions into the record, and then we can have commentary and we can close this meeting?
Right, so the motion would be to amend section 1 of the resolution by adding 2 new subsections to read as follows. Subsection E, Williams, Nettles, and Moon Map attaches Exhibit E, and subsection F, Moon Mockingbird 3.3 map attaches Exhibit F. To attach Exhibits E and F, which shall consist of the pertinent maps and corresponding data pages, and amend section 2 by inserting the letter F in the blank following the word exhibit.
The letter E, inserting the letter E.
E, not F, E, Ron, E.
Perfect.
So both motions fail.
No. E passes.
That's with 5 to 4.
5 to 4.
Mattie voted for it.
Oh, okay.
I voted, yeah. Okay. Now we can do discussion.
Yeah, I just want to make
Frank?
a comment. Obviously, this is not over, and I
Right.
want the people watching, citizens to know, there's a whole other process that will happen. This is just something we had to do as part of this resolution to get it to the task force. And so I would still have everybody be a part of the process and let people know their feelings
Yeah.
and thoughts.
Yeah, I will agree to that, Michael. And I even looked on the website this morning and saw all the different maps that were submitted. So there's still a long, lengthy process for these people to have a discussion and move the line, especially with our redistricting task force. And so we're ready for you guys to do your work and submit back to council.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I have a question for Fernando. Do you think it would be possible for our community engagement department to even put more information about this process? Because I would hate for the public to think, because they saw this body approve one map, that it's over.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
really think it's going to generate even more interest, and that's what I would
Yes.
like to see.
This map is one of 18 maps that the redistricting task force will be considering and recommending one of those maps to serve as the initial map to be considered by the city council starting in January. And we'll be glad to provide that explanation on the city's webpage.
And I would like to see community engagement put some type of trial, run, map study, whatever, in every district, so that we can make sure everyone knows that we're making it available to them.
Any other comments, council? Carlos? Sorry, Jared, I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Just want to add something to the record. Appreciate very much all the work that's been put into collectively, by this council to do this. This has been a very condensed process. It's complicated, and there are a lot of complexities that come into play. We wanted to do this, leave sufficient time for candidates to establish residency requirements. And again, back to Gina's point, the purpose of doing all this in the public eye is to make sure that we convey transparency and encourage public submission of their own maps. As I said before, the census plot data has given us a guidepost in which we need to endeavor to make sure that we have these minority opportunity districts. What I saw here in these latest iteration of maps was a step towards that. Okay, that is encouraging. Because again, the important criteria is to do just that, create minority opportunities districts. They were intended to create these opportunities for a fair representation rather than to promote any specific electoral outcome. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, when we're talking about percentages of African Americans, Hispanics, or other categories. So, there are a lot of, qualifications that come into play. Our city has grown, currently right now at 8-1. We have, essentially one, opportunity district, Hispanic opportunity district. And when we go to 10-1, it's only fair and equitable that we have more than just that one, 2 at least. I did not want to commit to any particular map. Again, as I said earlier, these changes, were coming, today, and, I need time to process. Again, I'm encouraged by some of those steps taken. I think we're heading in the right direction. I'm respectful of that process. So while I am not prepared to endorse any specific map now, I am, very satisfied to continue the process. To Michael's point, we're not done yet. It's going to continue. The redistricting task force will take into account this, map that's endorsed by City Council and other maps that have been submitted by the public and other interest groups, for the for council's ultimate final approval.
Thanks, Carlos. Jared?
Yeah, I just wanted to go on record commending this process. We look all across the state and all across the country at other redistricting processes. And this was certainly a step above many, the level of transparency in us submitting a map as a council for the redistricting task force to consider. I really appreciated that we're doing that out open and in the public, and also that it's a one map to be considered amongst the other 17 that were submitted by our residents today. And so although we did our part in submitting a map, this by no means is an endorsement that this map has to be the map that the task force selects. And so, kudos to staff and to mayor and council for committing yourselves to such an open and transparent process, one that hasn't been this way for the entire history of our city. So it's certainly a step forward in the right direction. And I commend each of y'all for that. I will say that, this process also lends itself to learnings for the next redistricting process in 2030. And so I look forward to the council in the future learning from what we, attempted to try to do and iterating and making a process even better, one that continues to reflect the growth and the growing diversity of our city. So thank y'all.
Thanks, Jared. Any other comments, council?
I mean, I will give kudos to you too, Mayor. I think you've done a great job of facilitating and make sure it stayed transparent along with city staff. So
Thank you, I
that's my-
appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I'll just close by saying valid points that Leonard read in the record today about North Fort Worth. We've got to pay some attention there, and I hope the redistricting task force can pay special attention because there's immense growth. And, no map was perfect, but Carrie, having lived up there and been a council member, probably best represented it. And that I hope Carrie will submit that map to the redistricting task force officially, because I think it's the best you've done, and you've spent probably, 3 weeks total at late nights, all-nighters, too much time. Yeah, exactly, which I really appreciate. So with that, we got to do one more vote. So we have to adopt a resolution, amending resolutions. Well, no, I'm sorry, backing up. This is to do with whether or not we approve of city staff redistricting, drawing a map for redistricting task force. There was some discussion end of last week. Before we vote, I'll just say I'm not concerned about this, having staff submit a map. There's been a lot of legacy around that in the past, and we have a lot of expertise. I would prefer we leave the resolution the way it is, but instead have council members individually express whatever intentions they had directly to staff if they have some observations as council members. Because I do appreciate the impartiality that staff provides and technical assistance. That's my perspective. I just want to be on the record of that. You're welcome to have your own. I know we're trying to move along into the work session. So, Jean, I'll turn it to you, and then eventually we're going to need to have a motion as to whether we're going to move forward with a different resolution or not.
Every once in a while, you'll see some information in our packets that you might overlook. And when it was brought to my attention that staff was creating its own map, I was surprised and said, really? But now that I think about it, it's more perfunctory. I think it's fine. I'm okay with it. And I look at it as one of those things that I just forgot to really read the fine details. I think the public and the task force, they know who we are. And they know when we put a map in from council, they won't get that confused. And so I'm no longer as concerned, and I'm fine with it.
Okay. Anybody else? Chris?
Yeah, I would just go on record and say I think the initial argument was city council and staff represents the city of Fort Worth. And I will keep my position with saying, because I have seen a couple of the maps that were drawn, which are completely different from the two maps that were submitted by Moon and the other map, E and F. And so I would say, I think that there's a lot of people that are out there that have participated in the process. I think the staff should support the council map that we presented, and that the redistricting task force do their work. So I'm not for the city staff doing the map.
Go ahead, Jared.
I'll jump in. This was a concern that I had, and Mayor Pro Tem talked about the fine print. I think that just from a charter and a governance perspective, that city staff drawing the map doesn't really align with that perspective. I think that the redistricting process and the drawing of lines should be reserved for, in this current charter, the city council and the residents of Fort Worth. And city staff submitting a map on behalf of the city of Fort Worth is not really consistent with what just happened here as a council body and us submitting a map to the task force. So I don't support city staff submitting a map outside of this body.
Thanks, Jared. So could you make a motion? And I bet you have a second from Chris. It's just a
Yes.
guess.
I move that we approve the, is it amended resolution?
amended
Adopted,
resolutions.
let me start over. I move that we adopt the amended resolution as presented.
Okay,
Yes, and with all that has happened with the state legislature, I second that motion.
okay. Any other discussion, council? Okay. Please vote yes on amending the resolution. Okay. No? Okay. Motion passes. If I can count right without my green thing in front of me. Okay. Very well. Raise your hand if you voted yes one more time for her. 5. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Do you need to read anything else in the record, Leanne? Nope. We're good? Okay, we're going to adjourn this meeting, and then we're going to move into work session.